One man, one company, 90% of an entire nation's oil. And when the United States government finally destroyed his empire to stop him, he got richer. This is John D. Rockefeller, the most despised businessman in American history, and the world's very first billionaire. Before we call him a genius, understand something. This man didn't build his empire through innovation alone. He built it through discipline, silence, and a coldness so absolute that even his closest allies feared him. To understand the billionaire, you have to go back to the beginning. July 8th, 1839. Richford, New York. John Davidson Rockefeller was born into a household split in two. His mother, Eliza, was a woman of iron faith, disciplined, honest, devout. She worked the land, raised her children, and taught them that integrity was the only currency that couldn't be stolen. His father, William Rockefeller, was something else entirely. The locals called him Devil Bill, and the name fit perfectly. Bill was a traveling con man who sold colored water as miracle cures to the dying. He posed as a deaf-mute beggar just to eavesdrop on farmers, then used their own secrets against them. He didn't just want money, he wanted control. He wanted to watch people lose. And he ran the same game on his own family. One afternoon, Bill placed young John on top of a chair and held out his arms. "Jump, son, I'll catch you." The boy jumped. The father stepped aside. John hit the floor hard. Bill looked down at him. Never trust anyone completely, not even me. That was the education. Not a school, not a lesson, a scar. By 1849, Devil Bill had gone too far even by his own standards. Accused of assault and facing consequences, he vanished. He took a new name, married a second woman in another state, and lived a double life for 50 years, while leaving his first family with nothing. John was 10 years old, and he never forgot. By 16, John was the man of the house. No theatrics, no complaints, just quiet, controlled focus, and an obsession with the one thing that had never once lied to him: numbers. He enrolled in a 3-month bookkeeping course, then hunted for work across Cleveland, knocking on the doors of banks, railroads, and merchants for 6 straight weeks. Rejection after rejection. Most employers laughed him out of the room. He was 16 and looked it. He didn't stop. Finally, a small firm gave him a chance as an assistant bookkeeper. He recorded every cent, earned and spent, in a small ledger he called Ledger A. By age 20, through sheer discipline and almost no spending, he had saved $800. To grow further, he needed more capital. So he did something that likely cost him something deep inside. He asked his father. Devil Bill said yes, and charged his own son 10% interest, with the right to demand it back at any moment. Just to keep you sharp. John took the money without argument. Partnership formed. Business launched. He was in. 1859. Pennsylvania. Someone drilled into the ground and struck black gold. The oil rush exploded overnight. Cleveland, just a day's ride from the Pennsylvania oil fields, became the refining capital of America. Hundreds of small operators flooded in, all chasing fast money. John's business partner wanted no part of it. Too chaotic. Too risky. Stick with what we know. John disagreed. People will always need to see in the dark. Oil is the light. He brought in a skilled chemist named Samuel Andrews and built a refinery. While other refiners wasted their byproducts, dumping gasoline, tar, and naphtha directly into rivers, John saw something different. He saw money being thrown away. Every byproduct became a revenue stream. He cut out middlemen. He built his own barrels from his own forests. He even controlled the kilns that dried the lumber. By 30, the boy who once held someone else's check just to feel what wealth looked like now owned the largest refinery in Cleveland. Most men would have stopped there. John looked at the skyline and saw hundreds of small, inefficient competitors bleeding the industry dry. To him, they weren't rivals. They were a problem to be solved. January 10th, 1870. Standard Oil Company was officially incorporated. John didn't target the oil wells. He targeted the veins, the railroads that carried everything. The railroad companies were at war with each other, slashing rates to steal business. John walked in and offered them a deal they couldn't refuse. 60 carloads of oil, every single day. Rain or shine, guaranteed. In exchange, he wanted something the railroad bosses thought was simply a business arrangement. It wasn't. It was a weapon. Secret rebates, massive discounts on every barrel John shipped. A private intelligence network, railroads handed John detailed reports on where his rivals were shipping, who they were selling to, and at what price. And the final blade, the drawback, every time a competitor used those same railroads, a portion of their payment was quietly redirected to Rockefeller. His competitors were paying John to compete against him, and they didn't even know it. When a rival refused to sell, John didn't raise his voice. He sat calmly, folded his hands, and laid out the mathematics of their destruction with the patience of a man who already knew how the story ended. You will go bankrupt. Sell now or be crushed. Your choice. Between February and March of 1872, 22 of the 26 refineries in Cleveland had surrendered. John's rivals called it the Cleveland Massacre. The public eventually found out. They burned him in effigy, marched with torches. The government revoked the arrangement within months. John didn't panic. He had already won Cleveland. The arrangement was just the instrument. He no longer needed it. What John invented next became the blueprint every monopoly in history would copy: vertical integration. He didn't just own refineries. He bought the barrel manufacturers so competitors couldn't package their oil. He bought the chemical plants so they couldn't refine it. He bought the warehouses, the pipelines, the rail access. His competitors could still drill oil out of the ground, but they couldn't move it, package it, or sell it without eventually needing something John controlled. When a group of Pennsylvania oilmen built a 110-mile pipeline to bypass his railroads entirely, an engineering miracle meant to break Standard Oil, John responded with sabotage, legal warfare, and bribery of local officials until the builders were financially exhausted. Then he bought the pipeline himself. For pennies. One by one, every independent operator in America folded, fled, or was absorbed. By 1879, John D. Rockefeller controlled 90% of the entire American oil industry. He had started with a ledger. He had ended with an empire. Standard Oil became a ghost that could own everything and answer to no one. From his offices at 26 Broadway, a building his inner circle called the Temple, John ran an operation that stretched across continents. He flooded Asian markets with kerosene in iconic blue tins. In China alone, he gave away millions of small oil lamps for free. Give a man a lamp, and you own his nights. To keep those lamps burning, that man would buy Rockefeller's oil for life. He drove the price of kerosene from 30 cents a gallon down to 8. For the first time in human history, the poor could afford light after dark. His fortune swelled past $900 million, roughly 1.5% of the entire American economy. And then his body began to betray him. The pressure of building an empire with no room for error took a physical toll. His hair fell out completely. His head, his eyebrows, even his eyelashes. He survived on crackers and warm milk. He became a gaunt, ghostly figure, wearing rotating wigs to disguise the damage. The machine was consuming its creator. 1902. A journalist named Ida Tarbell walked into the offices of McClure's magazine with 2 years of research and a personal score to settle. Her father had been an independent oil man, one of the men Standard Oil had destroyed. She had watched it happen as a child. Now she had the documents, the testimony, the railroad contracts, the secret rebate records, the spy network maps. She published everything. The articles didn't just expose Standard Oil. They exposed John himself, his tactics, his silence, his father's double life, the assault accusation buried for decades. The mask came off. And for the first time in his life, John D. Rockefeller had no countermove. He retreated into his estate and said nothing, which the public took as confirmation of everything. Her work handed a young, ambitious president named Theodore Roosevelt exactly the ammunition he needed. Roosevelt launched a full federal antitrust investigation. The case ground through courts for nearly a decade. May 15, 1911. The United States Supreme Court delivered its verdict. Standard Oil was declared an unlawful monopoly. The order: dismantle the empire. The trust was shattered into 34 separate companies. The world celebrated. John's enemies believed they had finally won. They were wrong. John still owned his shares. Every single one of them, now spread across 34 independent companies, free from the legal constraints of the trust. Once those companies were released to public trading, investors flooded in. The stock values didn't fall. They soared. By 1916, with the world shifting from kerosene lamps to gasoline-powered automobiles, John D. Rockefeller's personal fortune crossed $1 billion. The government had broken his company apart and accidentally made him richer. He was 72 years old. He had outlasted every competitor, every journalist, and the United States government itself. In his final decades, John hired the world's first professional public relations experts to rebuild his image. He appeared in newsreels handing shiny dimes to children. He funded the University of Chicago. He established the Rockefeller Foundation, which eradicated hookworm and yellow fever across entire continents. Was it guilt? A genuine awakening? Or the final, masterful move of a man who understood that legacy is just another kind of power? No one alive can say. What we know is this. May 23rd, 1937. The machine finally stopped. John D. Rockefeller died at 97. He missed his goal of living to 100, but he hit his other goal, to make $100,000, by a margin so incomprehensible it still defies calculation. He was born into poverty, raised by a con man, and abandoned before he became a man. And he turned every one of those wounds into weapons, the first billionaire the world ever produced. I believe the power to make money is a gift from God, and it is my duty to make it, and to use what I make for the good of my fellow man. John D. Rockefeller,